My dad runs a tree removal business out of our backyard, and he has since I was a baby. When I was 5, we moved to a house with almost 5 acres of property so he could park his work trucks, use wood chippers, and split and pile firewood comfortably. As a child, my brother and I loved playing near all that. My house is a little ways down a long driveway, and the driveway continues a bit farther to a garage with a small apartment attached. At that time, a couple my parents were friends with rented the apartment, which was about 50 yards away from our house. Fast forward to when I was 10 years old. My brother was 13. Something to note: my dad's employees weren't exactly admirable people. Some were ex-addicts, some thieves. Truthfully, I don't even know. Workers came and went. It's not the best job working in the hot summer months and then having no work during winter. Anyway, my dad hired 2 brothers who were in their early 20s. I remember one of them being very good looking, and his brother seemed dorky to me and wore glasses. 10-year-old me didn't pay much attention. All I wanted to do was climb the wood piles in my backyard. One fall day after school, my mom said it was too chilly to play outside and told me to stay in. I remember this so vividly. I remember what I was wearing and how I wanted my favorite stuffed animal near me as I colored. So I'm coloring. It's probably around 4:30, and my dad and his workers have just gotten back. They're in the garage, maybe smoking weed and having a beer together, which was apparently a normal routine after a long day. My mom was reading right by me. My brother was a few houses down the street with his friend and that friend's family who we'd grown close with. All of a sudden, my dad comes running through the back door yelling, "Get out of the house! Grab her and get out now! Run to the neighbor's house now!" Scared and confused, my mom jumps up, as do I, and I'm grateful my stuffed animal is close by, so I grab it and we run out the front door to the neighbors. It's chilly and my mom and I are barefoot. We fly up our long driveway. My dad, who I thought was right behind us, stops at the end of the driveway, yelling into his phone. We reach the neighbors where my brother is, and we see the cops speeding past toward our house. We're all so confused. As it turned out, those brothers my dad hired were hiding something. The dorky one with the glasses was very mentally ill and had gone off his medication. His brother and family were too embarrassed to mention it. Apparently, smoking weed and drinking alcohol was a trigger. That evening, when the employees were smoking weed and having a beer after work, they failed to notice that the guy had gone to his car, grabbed a rifle and started shooting all over the place, especially at the wood piles where I normally would have been playing, and into the garage with my dad's employees. He also shot at the cars, leaving bullet holes in many of the workers' and tenants' vehicles. The workers ran into the attached apartment with the couple who lived there. During this, my dad ran as fast as he could to the house to get my mom and me out. My dad's friend, who lived in the apartment, grabbed his hunting rifle and ran down to the garage area, while the employees hid in his shower. He saw the shooter jump in his car with the gun and get ready to speed off. My dad's friend broke the shooter's car window with his rifle and grabbed the gun from his hands, but the shooter took off down our long driveway. I'm so glad my mom and I weren't running there when he sped away. The cops caught him quickly just down the street, on the opposite end from where we were hiding. He was arrested, and my parents didn't press charges since no one was hurt. They were just upset that it could all have been avoided if someone had mentioned he was mentally ill. My dad doesn't run background checks, he just pays whoever is willing and needs cash. Shady, I know. Something I literally just learned tonight. The day before the shooting, my brother had a weird encounter with the shooter. He was at a gas station with our neighbor and a friend, the same family whose house we hid at the next day. My dad's worker pulled up and offered them a ride home. It was only a 3-minute car ride, so they agreed because they recognized him. They noticed he was wearing black nail polish and had his hood up, which wasn't normal for him. They didn't think much of it at the time. Now we think it might have had to do with him being off his meds, or maybe it was just a coincidence, who knows. I'm 25 now and still remember the experience vividly. I hope I never hear my dad's voice with that tone again. It was terrifying. I still don't know how I didn't hear the gunshots. My mom believes that since we live close to a gun range, we had grown so used to the sound that it didn't even register. So, to my dad's ex-employee who fired shots at our home, let's not meet ever again, please. This story takes place in a very small town in the northeast region of the United States in the summer before I went off to college in 2015. After I graduated high school, my parents decided to move to a smaller, more affordable house about 45 minutes north into the mountains. We stayed in my childhood home because the public schools in my area were the best in the state, and my parents really valued my education. I ended up going off to an amazing university, and now I have an incredible career because of my excellent education. As most people in the US know, amazing public education usually means higher property taxes. My parents got to the point where they could not afford the taxes on their 4,000 square foot home anymore, and decided to sell it just after I graduated from high school. Their home is humble and it sits on a beautiful piece of land on the side of a beautiful mountain. The trees are always so green, and there is a lot of wildlife around. They don't have many neighbors either, as their driveway is about 1.5 miles long, but this is what they chose to live in after I went off to college. In August of 2015, we moved into this new house. I wasn't planning on staying long, as I was getting ready to head off to college as a freshman for the first time. We decided to have a little housewarming party with a bunch of family friends and my best friend at the time as well. My dad was manning the barbecue, my mom was making drinks, and we were playing with our dogs. It was a grand time and everyone had so much fun. My dad had built a brick fire pit in our backyard. Just to set the scene for you, the fire pit was about 30 feet from our back patio door, and we had a picnic table and other seats all around. Behind the seating was the tree line. It was so dark sometimes at night. You needed a flashlight to see 10 feet in front of you. With the fire pit lit, you couldn't see someone unless they were either sitting next to you or across from you in front of the pit. My best friend decided to stay the night, and we asked my dad if we could make s'mores. As it was getting a little chilly, as it does in the late summer in the Northeast at night, my parents left us outside with my dog, Nino. Nino was a huge 100-pound black lab and pit bull mix. He was such a loyal and incredible dog that my dad trained as his right hand. He was our protector as he could run extremely fast, was very strong, and alerted us when something went bump in the night. Side note, he passed away a week before I got married in 2022. He was 17 years old and lived an adventurous life with my parents, hunting squirrels, laying out in the sun and running amok. Nino laid in between us, facing the tree line, and my best friend was to my right. Our backs were to the dark, dense tree line. Our first mistake. We were laughing, joking, and eating s'mores together, planning for the future and generally excited about going off to college together. She decided to play some music, and we just relaxed, feeling content and at ease. It was the perfect summer night, until Nino started growling. I saw his ears perk up and his head cocked to the side. He then sat up and continued to growl. My best friend and I both looked at each other, thinking Nino just saw a stray animal or something non-threatening. This area was known for lots of deer and rarely a coyote or wolf. As he was trained to help my dad hunt deer, we assumed it was a buck or fawn in the distance behind us. We went back to singing along to the music playing and talking about our fall 2015 class schedule. Again, Nino started growling. Our second mistake. We did not call out for my dad. We didn't even think there was a problem until Nino started barking repeatedly. This time, louder and more vicious. He stood up and started barking as if alerting us to activity beyond the tree line that we could not see. We stood up as well, the fire obscuring our view. My best friend took her phone, paused the music, and turned on her flashlight. She started to walk towards the edge of the tree line with Nino by her side, still growling and barking, alerting us not to go any further and to call for help. We stood still in silence, listening. I was too afraid to even breathe at this point. She started walking into the woods, and when she shined her flashlight, she saw a figure. Someone peering behind a tree. A man with a green shirt and green pants on. About 5'11" with glasses too. We screamed and ran as fast as we could inside, leaving the fire unattended and this creepy man behind the tree. What we did not know at the time was where this man came from. We crashed through our front door, breathless, with Nino tailing behind us, and startled my mother, who was washing dishes and cleaning up from the party. She was talking to my dad about something they saw on the news, and I think we cut him off mid-sentence to explain that there was a man dressed in all green lurking behind a tree in the woods. We didn't know how long he was there or if he was still there, but we were both crying. I remember feeling extremely sick, like I was going to throw up. My dad jumped up, grabbed his shotgun and headlamp, and ran outside with Nino. My mom gathered us into the living room, shut all of the lights in the house off, and locked the doors. She told us to be quiet and that she was going to call 911. As she did that, my best friend and I shook in fear. We were anticipating gunshots and screaming, but never heard any. My mom, now on the phone with 911, described what we saw to the operator. I heard my mom say, "Oh," in an alarming way. At this point, my dad came back inside and my mom let him know that the police were on their way to us. Being in a small town on the mountain with less than 10,000 people means that we don't get our own police force. We get the state police every time there is a call made to emergency responders. My dad put his gun away and waited outside for the police to show up. To our bewilderment, they didn't just send one police officer but 10 in an entire SWAT team, with a helicopter circling the area. We were rightfully terrified. I was practically having a panic attack at this point. The police officers came inside our home and asked my best friend and me what the man was wearing, what he looked like, and if we were able to discern any scars or tattoos. We explained the weird matching green outfit and the glasses. The officer excused himself and alerted the police and SWAT members outside with our description. They started to search the woods behind our home with guns drawn, flashlights, and the helicopter circling above. They advised us to stay inside and that they would let us know when or if they found something. After about 25 minutes, we got another knock on our door. It was not one but 2 officers this time. My dad let them in and they began to explain the situation. One officer explained that we must have seen on the news that a convicted felon from the prison about 20 miles away escaped into the mountains. The police set up a perimeter 10 miles around the prison, but the convict escaped them yet again. The outfit that man was wearing, as well as our description, signaled to them that the escaped convict was definitely lurking through our remote, densely wooded backyard that night. The all-green outfit was a standard issue for prisoners in my state at the time. They did not, however, find the man near us after 25 minutes of searching. He was still out there. The officers let us know that they were going to have a squad car stay and watch our house for a few days, as they were unable to locate the fugitive and believed he was still an active threat to our safety. That night and for 3 nights after that, we all slept in the living room together. My dad's shotgun was within arm's reach of him at all times. Later that week, we got another knock on our door from the officers stationed outside our home. They let us know that the man was back in police custody and that we were safe. They advised us to get security cameras and expressed how sorry they were that this happened to us. After that, my parents spent about $10,000 on security cameras and fencing for our backyard. It is now fully fenced, and we have about 4 cameras to watch the tree line at all times. I guess you never know what will happen or what goes bump in the night. To the escaped convict and perhaps murderer who watched my best friend and me sing along to 2015 pop hits from your hidey hole behind my parents' isolated home, let's never meet again. This happened last June. I was on a summer internship in a coastal city. For context, English isn't my first language and this city isn't in the US. I was 20 then, and was, and still am, a very anxious female. This city was very new to me. Even though it is a huge tourist destination, this was my first visit. My boyfriend at the time, a fellow university student, was also on the same internship as me. He was a local resident, though. Let's call him Gray. Us being technically on a summer break, we were quite excited about the prospect of the various beaches and coastal nightlife. After a few weeks, though, the usual routine got monotonous, as it usually does. So, being the bright-eyed idiots that we were, we decided to sneak to a beach after closing time and spend the night there, camping out and doing coupley stuff. Keep in mind, most of the public beaches there were considered very dangerous at night, not only because of the high tide, but also because of the high crime rate and the homeless and drug problems that cities that huge usually have. Another factor was the absence of patrolling forces after hours. Gray, the dummy that he is, later said that he knew of the crime rates, but since he was a sheltered upper-class kid, had no actual notion of it. And me, well, let's just say that I have anxiety without cause, so I have learned to mostly ignore the little pinpricks and tread where the more knowledgeable amongst us lead. So we decided on the date and place, a very off-the-route, secluded beach. It didn't attract many tourists, as only locals knew about its existence. We rode to the beach on Gray's motorcycle, got our supplies out, and easily sneaked onto the sand. Now, like I said, this beach was way off the route. It was nearly 20 kilometers from the outer part of the city, and it was located such that it was a few kilometers in through thick forest growth from the unofficial parking space. But we were undeterred and in a romantic mood, so we headed right in. The first few hours there were honestly the best time I've ever spent with Gray. We were drinking beer, playing music at full volume, running around splashing in the water. Mind you, keeping careful to stay close to the beach, just generally enjoying ourselves. By 3 a.m. we were worn out, sitting and snuggling, talking quietly and just making out. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, I saw a figure approaching our stretch of sand. It was an almost full moon night. As the figure drew closer, I grew more and more stiff. Finally, it reached our stretch and passed us by. It was a tall, burly, middle-aged man who looked down on his luck. He was staring right at me as he passed. I instantly felt vulnerable and asked Gray to skedaddle. But being the hormone-driven, red-blooded male he was, he insisted on staying and convinced me that the guy was just a nighttime stroller. After all, many people like beaches at night, right? So we continued with our snogging and snuggling. A few minutes later, guess what happened? That same man came from the opposite direction and passed us again. This time, though, we didn't notice his approach as we were rather busy until he was right next to us. He was smiling the whole time. I was way beyond spooked now and wanted an out as soon as possible. But Gray rationalized that maybe the guy was just heading back. In any case, we had to stay put because Gray felt he was too intoxicated to ride. He said to give him an hour or so to mellow out a little more. We checked our phones and, as is expected in a horror situation, they were dead. Following Murphy's Law to the T. I was very stiff and tense by then, stewing internally. I was only then realizing what a stupid idea it was to come out so late to such a foreign place, with nobody around except maybe a wannabe serial killer. So we were again left alone. Just to be on the safe side, I decided to acquaint myself with the largest stick or piece of driftwood I could find, which I did. Gray laughed at my attempt to arm myself and wasted no time telling me that if that man really wanted to get at us, that measly piece of wood would do nothing. I decided right then that Gray was an overconfident dumbass. By this time, another 20 minutes had gone by, and Gray wanted to resume where we left off, but the mood was ruined for me. Honestly, I was just waiting for Gray to regain his senses so we could get the heck out of there. By the time another 20 to 25 minutes passed without any sightings of the man, I had sufficiently calmed down, and Gray was back to feeling normal. Not that he was ever really worried. An hour or so passed, and I began to feel sleepy. I forgot to mention that we were reclining against a sand dune kind of thing, which stretched on for miles in either direction. In order to leave, we would have to climb it. It wasn't that high, maybe mid-thigh length, and then continue toward the forest area, which steadily grew thick. The underbrush and forest itself wasn't long, just a few yards really. Gray was almost asleep with half of him on top of me when suddenly I heard a voice from behind us. It was a weird combination of a moan and a hiss. I jerked back to look at what it was. Horror of all horrors. It was a kneeling figure a few yards away. It was the same man. With the moon shining on him, I could clearly see that he was bare-bottomed and pleasuring himself. I think I went numb with shock, maybe letting a soft gasp escape. Gray was jumping up and pulling me with him. Suddenly, the man got up too, and I vividly remember him stepping out of his pants as cool as a cucumber and calmly walking toward us. I screamed at that point. Gray scrambled to pick up the stick I had previously found, started brandishing it wildly, and shouted at the man to back off. The man stopped and stared, smiling at us the entire time. We scrambled up the dune and started running back, cutting a wide path around the man. As we reached the trees, I was constantly looking back and saw him start to run towards us. I screamed so loudly that I rattled Gray, who was pulling me along. We then flat out sprinted toward the parking space. Upon reaching it, we saw that the bike was lying on the ground, like someone had pushed it over. I thought I might pass out from the stress, but Gray kept a cool head, calmly pulled the bike upright and turned it on. It was still working. I hopped on behind him and we peeled out of there. We were very quiet the whole way to the inner part of the city, with me constantly looking back, expecting to see the man running after us. Fortunately, nothing and no one followed us. By the time we reached the inner city and stopped at a little crowded place, considering the time to take a breather, I was exhausted. I was wearing a skirt with no pockets, so Gray was carrying my mobile in his jacket, which he later realized he had dropped while we were running. We were both unwilling to go back and look for it. Another instance of Murphy's Law. By morning, we did everything necessary, blocked my previous SIM cards, and Gray got me a new phone. We didn't contact the police as it was quite apparent that we were in the wrong, technically trespassing when it was expressly advised against. Also, we had no information to give them. That night I learned that it was okay to be a little anxious, and I lost my poor little mobile phone. So to the creepy dude at the beach, let's not meet ever again. This event happened about 5 years ago when I was 22. For some context, my girlfriend at the time and I were both shunned by our respective families for choosing to date each other. In retrospect, I guess our family members could see the writing on the walls. However, we were young, dumb, and thought love would conquer all, which turned out to be wrong. But I digress. I was recently out of work, but we did have income from her full-time job, so we had a plan. Lived cheaply for a month while we saved for a place and I looked for work. We were essentially homeless, living and sleeping out of our car. We could only go back home if we weren't together anymore. So we decided we could make it on our own without help and overcome this hurdle. We lived in a very affluent part of town, a wealthy suburb in Florida, so it was always hot and humid, without tons of crime. Sleeping in a small sports car was not ideal for a month of sleeping. She spent her days working, and I spent mine looking for work and making money however I could. At night, it was the only extended period of time we spent in the car. After a few nights sleeping in Home Depot parking lots, we decided the beach would be much easier to get a decent night's sleep. However, the beach is closed at night, and as we found out for good reason, even though the beach is closed, it's lined with 30-story hotels, houses, and bars. It's hard to constantly patrol, and not to mention the beach is huge, more than 30 miles of premium sand. We found a nice spot up in the cattails, tall beach plants, and set up a place to stay. We kept most of our belongings in the car, so we just looked like a couple of stargazers who had fallen asleep on some towels. This worked great for about a week. Honestly, if it weren't for our situation, I would have loved it. Sleeping outside can be so refreshing in our modern culture. We dodged the police one night after a spotlight hit us from a patrolling jeep. They asked if we were sleeping. We said no, and they went on their way, only saying, "Hope not." I'm a clean-shaven 5'8", 180-pound white guy. She's 5'1", 110 pounds white in nice clothes. We didn't exactly look homeless. I wish we had taken the hint. 2 days later, we were doing the usual. Everything went off without a hitch. We were tucked away out of sight. You would either have to know where we were or stumble upon us. We were probably 30 yards from the shoreline at our 12 o'clock. I was awakened from a deep sleep at 3 in the morning. I'm a heavy sleeper, like a sleep through a nuclear war heavy, so it was unusual for me to wake up. I took a sip of water and tried to go back to sleep when I noticed 2 figures down by the shore. I wasn't too alarmed at first because there have been a few occasions when people went swimming late at night or teens had little parties. But we were never noticed, and everybody seemed benign. However, I couldn't stop watching these 2 figures. One was a giant. I'm talking 6'6" or taller. The other was average height. I woke my girlfriend up after they kept looking our way and making hand gestures. They were too far away to make out what they were saying. Up until that point, I had always wanted to give most people the benefit of the doubt. Most people are good, right? I wasn't so sure anymore. I could feel their ill intent. It was palpable. It scared the hell out of me. We had our valuables on us, phones, wallets, keys, just in case something happened. I had always heard that homeless people make easy targets, and I could attest to that now. We saw them pass a glass pipe back and forth. Judging by its shape and the amount of time the substance stayed red, I could only imagine it was some sort of cocaine or amphetamine. They put the pipe away and proceeded to head straight toward us. We stood up fully alert and tried to decide what to do. We surprised them, I guess, as they had assumed we were asleep. That made them pause, giving us crucial moments to come up with an escape route. They changed tactics. The giant walked straight toward us. The average man made a wide half circle, trying to flank us at our 9 o'clock. I grabbed my girlfriend's arm as she gathered our items that I was clearly okay with abandoning and never seeing again. She dropped the unimportant stuff when she saw the look of horror on my face. We immediately ran toward our 6 o'clock, through very tall grass and sand spurs, spikes from dried plants that stick into your flesh. Maybe the men hadn't planned on this, or maybe they were just high. We only heard one of them say, "Oh, come on," like he was disappointed I was trying to save our lives. Who knows? We ran 1.5 miles to the car, got in, and drove away immediately. We each had over 20 sand spurs in our feet, although we didn't feel them on account of all the adrenaline. We never stayed at the beach again. We lived our month on the road, then found a place to stay. Creepy shadow murderers or whatever on the beach. Let's not meet.